Always says to me, you know, Sean, you have such a great ear, right? They always tell me, Sean, you have a great ear. And I say, no, it's not really ear. So let's take a look at the actual formula that we use to figure out what top musicians are doing. So I would say roughly about 70% of the time we figure out what musicians are doing from our own existing vocabulary. 20% of the time we figure out what musicians are doing based on our own knowledge of the rules and of theory. And that last 10% is what your ear actually hears. All right, so to prove my point that the ear is not as important as you may think it is, imagine going to a country that speaks another language that you don't understand. Now you can hear what they're saying, but it makes no sense. Without the existing vocabulary of that language, you can't make sense of the words, even though you can hear what they're saying. Similar to music, you can hear complex stuff, you can hear the stuff, but it makes no sense to you. And this is why you can see in my chart that knowing the theory and understanding the rules is actually twice as important as hearing the chord. In today's video, we're going to focus on the theory that I use to hear what top musicians are playing. To see how I figured out Quinnell, what he was doing. My vocabulary wasn't enough and my ear wasn't enough. So check this out. I want you to hear what I did here in this video. I just did this a couple of weeks ago. Now he's playing Jesus Loves Me in the key of G, and I know that he's ending on a G chord. If you look at this chart that I've been working on, it's not finished, but I'm going to show it anyway. And by the way, if you're on the website, we're going to be talking about this a lot. So definitely show up to these meetings that we have on Monday. This chart moves from left to right. So chords like to move from this section over here, then they move to the middle generally, and then they move either to a major or minor. The major chords are in green, the minor chords are in blue. So I know he's ending on a green chord, and I know that before he plays that green chord, he's going to play a chord that has a D, because remember, the dominant chord is always 5 above where you're going. So he's going to have a chord that starts with a D, and it's going to be one of these 10 choices. The theory has helped me to narrow this down. This is an example of me using the theory to help my existing vocabulary to really narrow down what musicians are doing. Now I'm going to look at an example where I have not figured out the chords yet. So let's see what I would do to figure this out. Mark Angelo, I Need You to Survive in D flat. Oh yeah, man. See, those are the chords that we want right there. Now, if I have the existing vocabulary, some of you may recognize that those are diminished chords. And you say, oh, he's just using diminished chords. Well, wait, but how? What? In what way? That doesn't... Okay, I have to have the theory to know what those really are. And in fact, they're masquerading as diminished chords, but they're really not. Let's look and see what's actually happening in here. He's moving to a B flat chords. So he's moving to a B flat minor 7, which is in blue. And right before you play a B flat, it's going to be some type of dominant chord. See, a lot of the times when you guys are hearing all these dope movements, they're going to be happening in the red section here, by the way. He's about to play a chord that starts in a B flat. And so that I know that if he's playing a dominant chord, he's going to be playing some type of chord that has an F at the bottom. Now, someone's going to say, but Sean, didn't he do this? Right? And I'm going to say, yes, he did. And you're going to say, well, those are diminished chords. And I'm going to say, well, no, because if I have an F and I have a dominant chord and I have a flat 9, which means I have to add an F sharp. Now watch what happens if I take the F off the bottom. It looks just like a diminished chord, and so your ear will take this from your vocabulary and say this sounds like a diminished chord, but the theory actually recognizes this for what it really is, which is a type of dominant chord. You guys need to check out my video that I have about these diminished chords masquerading as flat 9s. He's using this to approach a B flat minor. So this chord here, they're all the same chord because diminished chords are symmetrical, and he's simply moving this down in half steps. So this is again an example of where I may have the vocabulary of knowing what a diminished chord is, but having the theory knowledge and understanding the rules really helped me to narrow this thing down, make sense of it, and be able to use it in other songs. So if y'all don't mind, I'm going to do one more here. I actually just recently updated a song by Mike Burrell, More Than Anything. And by the way, if you're on my mailing list, I sent this out to 20,000 people as a free file. And so just check your email because that's going to be there. You're going to see, because I did the vamp to this song a couple years ago, and I actually just figured out the verse and went ahead and did the chords for you. So go ahead and grab that. But I want you to listen to this chord here, one of the most difficult chords to hear. See, so Mike uses these really advanced chords that are actually not in my vocabulary. What does that mean? It means that Sean doesn't play those chords, so he can't rely on his vocabulary. Now, he can hear the chord just fine, so nothing wrong with his ear. He can hear the chord's not in his vocabulary, so now he has to rely solely on theory to try to figure out what this chord is. So if we're looking at the green section here, this song's in the key of A flat. He's ending on this chord, so it's not a passing chord because you don't end on passing chords, you end on the 1. He's ending on the 1 in the key of A flat. It's some type of A flat chord. But that's not the chord he played, because listen to it. So that sounds way different than just a standard A flat chord, but the theory still helps me to narrow this down. At least I know it's some type of A flat major chord, because that's the chord that the song uses, is an A flat major. I'm thinking that he's playing a gospel 1. Now, what is a gospel 1? A gospel 1, as you can see in the chart, is a chord that has the minor 7. So a regular musician may go, Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. But the gospel musician will go, Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. We'll use the 7th chord. It baffles all the other musicians, right? But this is the way that a gospel musician, we like to play dominant chords as passing and also as landing chords. So this A flat chord that Mike used, he's using the gospel 1, which means he's adding an F sharp, which means that this is some type of A flat dominant chord. It really helps me to narrow down what he played. So I know it's some type of dominant chord. Now, the only thing now that my ear has to do, because remember, vocabulary is out, can't use the vocab. Now, the theories help us to narrow this thing all the way down. So now I'm going to use my ear to try to pick out any of the tension notes, because that's the only way to do this. And this is the way that I actually figure out these difficult chords. See, so I'm adding a D and A. I only need to hear maybe 1 or 2 chords, because I'm going to add these notes to the existing dominant chord. And I know that the top note is an A flat. Now, there may be some notes here that are missing, but if you can play mine against his, see, and now you have it there. And I just added these notes, and I maybe added an F in there. Now, there may be 1 or 2 notes that are missing, but again, that's not what's important, because I always say that transcriptions, I aim to get 95% correct. What my point is that the theories help me to narrow this thing down to as close as possible to what I'm hearing. And now all I have to do is pick out the off note. So this is a perfect example of where understanding the rules, understanding your theory, the ear isn't helpful except to really just narrow down 1 or 2 notes. It's the theory that's twice as important as being able to hear, because that will help you get at least in the ballpark of where you need to be. So again, the ear by itself does very little, because it's not what you hear that counts. It's how you're making sense of what you hear that matters. And this is the reason why I say it's slightly misleading sometimes for programs to say we're going to help you get a better ear, because you can hear just fine. There's nothing wrong with your ear. The problem you're having is making sense of what you're hearing. So I think it'd be more accurate to say we will help you learn the language, or we will help you to build your vocabulary. Because remember, the more chords that you know, you'll be able to recognize chords, just like you'll recognize words when you hear words that you know. It's the first video that I'm doing for this year on just kind of what you should be focusing on: gaining vocabulary, gaining the understanding that you need, and the theory and the rules that you need to understand chords. And you're going to be a top musician. You'll be able to hear what people are doing, and that's how you're going to grow in the fastest way possible. Thanks again. I'm Sean.